Okay, so by now you've made your electronics chassis assembly. It's all wired up and basically ready to go.
Oh yeah, make sure, but yes, yeah, like everything on your BeagleBone as well, all the software should be loaded and installed. The steps you should have completed before.
Oh yeah, that's right. So yeah, what we're going to need for this these coming steps is this whole thing up and running. So yeah, we didn't mention that in the last video, but before you load this, it's really important that you've already put the new software on for the BeagleBone.
Well, at the very least, the new image, so you can update the software. Yes.
Yeah, well, I guess that works. Same thing. Right, because you put the image on and then, okay, anyway. Look, so here's the other part that you're going to need. This is the structure. It's got the motors and battery packs. By now you've already potted them into the end cap and it looks like this. As we'll have shown, you put labels on each of the sets of wires. So here I have a thing that says S for starboard. This is BP for battery port. There's another that says BS for battery starboard, vertical, and so on. So because we're going to be cutting these wires to the right length, that's what the objective of this is, we're going to need to slide those labels down. If you can't slide them down, you can just relabel them, but this is what it looks like now. I'm going to want to cut everything about there later on. So as the first move, you just take these and slide them to a place below where you're going to cut everything. So that's pretty easy to do. It kind of depends on what tape you have too. Like some tapes don't slide that easily, and it may just be easier to make new labels altogether. So anyway, this is pretty straightforward, obviously. The labeling is really just going to be useful so you don't cross pins before putting them into the Molex connector. So now they're all slid down, and this is kind of a nerve-wracking part because you've spent all this time getting these wires through this and potted. You want to make sure that you don't cut it too short or too long. Originally, I had called out to make this kind of extra long because, you know, if the servo were strong enough to rotate the whole thing, that would kind of allow the wires to rotate back and forth. But I just prefer to not use the servo, and that's why in this case we only have room for one O-ring. It makes things a lot easier. There's a lot more space. You're lighter in the water, and because we're doing that, we can cut things a little bit closer. You can picture that the other Molex connector, let's see, I have that laying around here somewhere. The other Molex connector is pretty low profile. Yeah, well, I don't have it here. So let's see, I'm gonna get that and then we'll show you how to cut it. In this video, we're gonna show you how to cut the wires to the right length to attach to the E-chassis. And then we're also going to show you how to put some of these Molex connectors on. By now you've already made the E-chassis. You've assembled everything. It's all wired up. The SD card that's in the BeagleBone has the updated software in it. So it should be good to go once we fire it up. Also, you've already made the internal structure, which has the motors and batteries going through the end cap, which is now potted. What we've done now is we had labeled these labels for starboard thruster, for battery port, for port thruster. These had been kind of up on the top of these wires, and we just slid them down so that there's enough room when we cut for them to still be labeled. In general, the way we're going to just measure it, rather than giving you an explicit number, is just take your E-chassis, place it about here, and that's kind of the length you want to cut. I'd say cut it so it's right about flush with this bulkhead. You can see the connector that they're all going to fit into is right here. And so if you can kind of see through the plastic, you can see that those pins end up, it just happens basically about flush with where this wall is. So this is always a little bit nerve-wracking. You don't want to cut it too short, but you also don't want to cut it too long because that'll just get in the way. Maybe to leave a little bit of extra room, since this flops back and forth, go a little bit further, like the actual halfway part is right there. I might cut like right above that. So yeah, leave a little bit of extra room. Also remember that the ones that are going out to the side are in kind of a hypotenuse, so there should be a little bit of extra room for that. I'd say about there. If you put this against the end cap, put your fingers here, that's probably good enough. So here we go. Slip away. Much easier to cut shorter than to cut longer, than to make it longer afterward. This is like a kid who's had long hair for a really long time and then finally giving them a haircut. I remember doing that when I was a kid. Cool. So that's the length you want. the next step is to put these female connectors on. I guess, I don't know, Colin, we could show them one of those in this video. I don't think we need to show the whole thing. It's pretty straightforward. If you've already built the E-chassis, then by now you're intimately familiar with putting on crimp connectors, but just for funsies, we'll show you how one of them works. Now remember, here you had the male pins. Those are the pins that are in this part that's built into the E-chassis. From the end cap, we want the female pins. They're these ones that have these kind of holes in the middle. And that hole will fit around the male part here. So, you know, as usual, what we do is, it doesn't matter what pin is what, because we're just going to put these on all of them. We're just going to clip about 1/2 centimeter, about 5 millimeters of space. And then, as we did before, we put the conductor part through the smaller crimp area. And then we have the right crimpers. You can also do this with pliers, but it's better with crimpers like this. We're going to crimp the conductor part. The insulative layer is going through the area where the outer crimp is going to fit. Giving a little tug, make sure that's a nice connection. Now crimping the part that goes around the insulation. There you go. So there's one of them. So now just kind of quickly we can put crimps on all of these. Well, actually there's 2 that you don't want to put crimps on, or 4. This is one little thing I should mention. We're going to want to cut these 2 battery wires, or 4 battery wires, 2 for each, the starboard and port battery packs. There's this kind of splicing thing that we're going to do a little bit later, where we cut them shorter, solder just a single wire to them, and then we're going to put a crimp connector on that. So you can put all these crimp connectors on the motors right away, and we can do that as a separate step. Or if you want, you can just skip to that video and put those wires on now and then do the crimping later. The order doesn't really matter, but ultimately we're going to end up with, let's see, 9 wires for the motors plus 2 for the battery. That's 11 wires with little female jacks on them. So there's that. Oh, and then tether. Of course, I'll have to crimp that too. So 13 wires. That's what's going to come next.